and we'll get to the other Eastern Conference series, and that is the number 2 seed New York Knicks and the number 6 seed Indiana Pacers.
Go New
And
York, go New York, go.
Well, the thing that's interesting about this series is that the Knicks led 2-0 heading to Indianapolis.
Oh,
and
man.
Jalen Brunson going into Indianapolis, that this streak has now come to an end. But as of last Wednesday, or Wednesday morning, Wednesday night, Jalen Brunson had 6 games in a row with 25 points or more, which is the second longest streak in Knicks postseason history, right behind Bernard King with 7, and he tied Carmelo, who had 6 in a row. And so, again, he's putting himself up there with the greatest of the great. But ultimately, the Pacers come back. They win game 3 because of a crazy shot by Andrew Nembhard, who was 1 of 7 until he jacked up that shot from the left wing. And as Gary said, it was deep. It was a heave, and it went in. And the Indiana Pacers ultimately end up taking game 3. Then they come back in game 4. TJ McCollum absolutely gave an uppercut to the Knicks in game 4. The Knicks seemed gassed out, and now the series is tied. So Gary, I'm going to toss it back to you first on this one. Just what did you think about this series thus far? Because each team is holding down home court.
Exactly, man. I've been loving it. Like every game except this last game 4 has been pretty much nip and tuck the whole way through. And then one team prevails at the very end. Like you mentioned, there was a thriller in game 3 that we had. And I'm just proud of these Pacers, man. These Pacers, everyone after the first 2 losses that were pretty tough in Madison Square Garden, you felt like the Knicks kind of just knew how to close a little bit better than the Pacers. But they answered back on their home floor. Full throttle, Tyrese Haliburton, really getting things shaking. 20 points. He's been playing great the last 2 games, getting his guys involved. You already know he's the engine, and once he gets cooking and becomes a point guard like he is, it just starts manifesting all across the board to all the other players, and you see guys shoot great like Turner, 5 for 5, didn't even miss nothing at all. 13 points, but made all his literally 5 for 5 and 3 for 3 from 3-point land. Everyone is shooting great, and it's trickled down where at the end of the day, they had they came out with the big first 2 big punches in the first, second quarter, and, the Knicks weren't able to hit them back, and they weren't able to get back into their groove when you have, once in a while you had the players that everyone's been raving about finally had a bad game. Finally 2 games, quote unquote. Last game wasn't really bad, but because it was right there, DiVincenzo was getting off game 3 too. So it's just really been one bad game finally from Hart and Brunson, all these guys, basically the starting lineup, DiVincenzo, the Nova guys. They had just a bad shooting night where it trickled down, where they weren't able to score 89 points, man. 89 points. And, that's been kind of, if we've been noticing these playoffs, man, defense intensity has been getting up. You haven't been seeing too many cracking over 110. Everyone's been pretty much over around 100, 101, maybe even 90s earlier today when we watched 2 games today. So, I think that, Indiana, it's going to be tough, man. I think it's going to be hard to win it looks like it's going to be pretty hard to win a road game for either team. And it looks like whoever steals a home road game first is going to win this series, unless they go to game 7 and, Indiana wins Knicks win at home. But I picked the Knicks in the beginning of the series. I got them winning game 5. And then I think they're going to, I think we're going to go to game 7, y'all. I think I got the Knicks in game 7. Indiana come back and win game 6. Knicks win game 7. We're going to have the whole showdown all the way down to the very end. And, yeah, the momentum has kind of shifted, obviously, but they can get it right back, especially being back in New York. And they're going to have that crowd jumping. Like I always say, the role players always play better at home, especially in the playoffs. So, it's been a pretty good series so far. It's been an entertaining series so far, and it's just been about the role players, man. Who is shooting good that night has really been dictating the pace of things, because when Indiana gets up and running, it's the Knicks kind of like that pace too in a way, but not too much depending on, I feel like, who's in the game and whether they really like it or not. And, they like to, obviously run some angles and stuff like that in their game with a lot of cuts and easy baskets. So, running and gunning kind of helps them sometimes, but not really half-court game. So whoever's going to be controlling the pace and controlling each possession is really going to be winning this game here, and I think it's going to be the home team going forward.
Jaevon, how do you see this series going? And I know that you mentioned earlier that it seems like you're leaning towards the Pacers, or at least that's what your cough said.
Or maybe that's what he wants.
Andy.
I mean, it really doesn't matter who the Celtics play, in my
Oh,
opinion.
it's like that.
I just think the Knicks are kind
Not
of just
like
like
us.
running out of gas. Yeah, not like us. It
Mm-hmm.
just seems like New York is just running out of gas. You're seeing guys like Brunson, Hart, DiVincenzo. Like DiVincenzo had a 30-point game a few games ago. You saw Josh Hart was able to go off for like a 24 or 25-point game in this series. And I think one thing Garry forgot to mention was the absence of OG Anunoby. His presence is definitely being missed on the
Bodies are
perimeter
dropping, man.
defensively. He's just another guy that can kind of defend on the perimeter. And I think it's kind of just been the tale of two teams. Like you have one team that doesn't really trust a lot of guys, play 5, 6, 7 guys. Whereas Indy, they're playing. They're looking. Carlisle's looking deep into his bench. Like you got guys like Obi Toppin knocking down corner threes. And you had Andrew Nembhard. He hit a prayer of a jump shot in game 3. I just think it's kind of teetering towards Indiana side. Now I get the thing with these playoff series is a lot. Momentum is huge. Whether that is you're going back home and winning, because New York had all the momentum going into game 3, and that was kind of the game that they needed to win. And I believe OG Anunoby got hurt in that game, but Nembhard hit the shot of his life. Like Shaun said, he was like 1 for 7 from the field, and then he buries that step back 3 with time winding down. Thought the game was going into overtime, to be honest, but yeah. And then they lose that game, and instead of going up 3-0, it's 2-1 now, and now Indy has the momentum, and kind of that carried over, and OG's already hurt, and so that kind of all spiraled out of control. But I believe New York is slightly favored in this game coming up. I think it's tomorrow that they play. Brunson hasn't really had a match